And we are live. It's exactly 7 o'clock. Good evening. My name is Karabo Tana Maitinyalungu, and I welcome you to yet another installment of the Purpose and Dominance Show. Now, this is a show that gives leaders a platform to invite us into their leadership style and help us understand the psyche that happens, or the psyche around having to make certain decisions, having to be a part of certain movements, having to release certain statements, having to have their voices and names attached to certain programs. Now, everything rises and falls on leadership, and tonight I will be joined by a guest that is the Wits SRC President Khumalo, and he will be inviting us into his space, letting us understand how he leads, why he does certain things the way he does. Basically, we want to understand the human behind the brand. So we don't want to talk to the Wits SRC president, the position, but we want to talk to the human that influences some decisions that the Wits SRC president gets to make. We want to understand all of that. And as I'm waiting for Cebo to request, feel free to interact with us on the comment section, and you can leave your questions, your comments, and your contribution towards this. And I see Cebo has joined now. Cebo, please request so that I get to accept you. I see Mashita Tsidi. Good evening. Khumalo, good evening. Motsepe Umpile, good evening. Is there a way I can add? Invite. It's not going through. There we go. Hi, leadership. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Welcome back from Israel. It's good to see that you're still in one piece.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again for availing yourself. But I want to know, how do I get to let the university take me through Israel as well? I want to go, How do we get into these things?
So the educational trip. So we visited Israel and Palestine. We were in Israel for 5 days and then 3 days in Palestine. As you know, that there's been a looming sort of conflict that we always told about. So these educational trips that happen around us. So I applied for it, and then some of the students did also apply for it, and then we went there just to observe what is happening. Majority of the students we went with are students are within the IR department, meaning they are looking into things such as policy, and then others are just students who are in their third years, final years, considering on whether which topics to tackle going towards their honors or masters.
All right, understood. So I'm not in any way meeting the criteria, but it's okay. And we did say that this is going to be a leadership conversation. Now, there are many leadership definitions, right? And
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, when was your first encounter with leadership? But more importantly, how did you know that it was leadership?
In my life or within the university?
In your life, yes.
I would take it back to, I think, 2011. There was a time when I was chased out of school. So it was the first term, and then I was kicked out. I'd had a fight, and one of the teachers. So after I got kicked out, one of the teachers came to me and said with me, "Is like, I understand what's happening." That was the first time I sort of encountered sort of racism and all these things. But I remember that teacher, she took me out, like we sat down, she explained everything. And I went home as much as I was sad at that point, but I understood where I was. I understand the space I had visited. It was a different space from where I had sort of lived. And obviously, I reacted violently when I was faced with that experience because, I mean, it's easy. I want to so guys from would say we wouldn't allow someone to sort of either disrespect you or look down on you. And for me, that was a different way of approaching life because there had always been so much like a bit of violence in how I reacted to things. I think after she sort of gave me that explanation, I became a little bit calm in terms of how I deal with situations. So that was my think first encounter of leadership outside of people I knew, just from strangers meeting in the streets.
Now, I want to bring in an elephant in the room. So earlier on in the year, I read Wits. There's a report about a post that you've written on social media, and it said that, I'd alluded rather, that you are somewhat patriarchal. I tried to ignore that. I go to come through. I find members of your SRC there. Obviously, they wouldn't say they were members of the SRC, but you could tell there's claims of being led by dictatorship. So there's been rather an interesting start to your term that perhaps have had people misunderstand you. Clear that for us. Did you say you believe in patriarchy? What was the report about? Is it targeted? Engage us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that question. I think we've seen a majority in our country when there is sort of an exchange of power or when there is a change of power that is taking place. Obvious, we tend to either do things that are uncomfortable towards each other or say things that are uncomfortable towards each other, obvious, with a hope of discrediting the other person. But I never responded to the claims that were made there because when students voted for me to be the Wits SRC president, I think they were very clear on what they were doing. But my SRC, I think they're very supportive. I think at the time, like in any other sort of government structure, there are tensions that sort of happen, but obvious through the team building initiatives that we have had with the university, we've sort of managed to reconcile with majority of the members that at the time they sort of felt uncomfortable. And right now we're working together collectively. We've been doing amazing work with everyone in the SRC.
So I'm going to ask you directly, do you believe in patriarchy?
I don't think the question should be whether you believe, but maybe is it there? Yes, I'm aware that it's there. The debate came as a result of so if you go back into my history at Wits, I once also attempted to write a book, and my book was on misconceptions of patriarchy and oppressive feminism. So when I then came with that concept, that's when people came through saying, he's saying he believes in patriarchy, but I was laying out my thoughts on the two topics. I didn't finish writing my book, but I do have a few chapters that I wrote on it. So that history sort of comes from that.
Now, this brings me to my next question. How do you then balance between the pressure of sounding politically correct and having an opinion as a human being?
Yeah, I think look, I wouldn't consider myself a politician because if I was a politician, I would have been very accurate in the answers that I was going to be giving. So I think it's quite difficult, particularly if we're speaking governance-wise and mixing with your personality, particularly at a university, because you are also still trying to grow, find yourself. And then on the other hand, you have so much hope, you want to assist students, and students do believe in you. So majority of the times, you find yourself speaking between the two. There is an intertwined relationship because at some point your personality is what drives the change that you see in governance. So it's quite difficult to separate it within an SRC level, but because some spaces are very professional, so then they naturally separate themselves. You find yourself speaking in governance, but also because myself, I'm a student of politics and IR, and I'm also a student of law. So I'm able to understand the language, you're able to understand the spaces you are in. And I don't think it's a shock that majority of people in the country that are within the political space are doing law. It is because of the background of understanding in terms of issues. So they naturally separate, particularly if you have the background that I have. And then obvious for people that maybe studied, because we have people that are doing or your engineering and other studies that are within the political space. It's a learning curve. It's only when you understand that you need to be professional in your articulations, that's when you realize that, oh, actually, there's been a separation on my articulations on personal issues and also generally on governance.
You spoke about the tensions that happened earlier in the leadership structure, that is the SRC. Now, you've been in the institution for quite some time, so you are a very old person to be leading with AMA 2000, right? And that then brings in different dynamics and different approaches to leadership. What's it like having to lead people whom you do have existing generational differences and different approaches to leadership? I mean, you were there when FISMAS 4 was here, right? And that then shapes to a certain degree how you approach your leadership. But you are there with people now in the SRC who haven't experienced FISMAS 4 directly. Now, that being just an example, how do you then, what's it like leading people who are much younger than you, having to share different ideologies and your understanding of leadership?
Thank you. So I mean, you'll be shocked. Majority of people in my SRC have been in the space.
Okay.
Just that I've been in the space longer than them. I'm doing my third degree now at Wits. But what I can say is that I think we've been articulating to say what we would want to see in the country is a generational mix. We would want to see young people taking up spaces together with the people that are sort of doing well in governance, right? And I think this is a perfect model that has been implemented at VETS. I would be considered as a relatively old compared to the people that I'm serving with. Either educational wise, age wise, and the number of years that we've spent within the institution. And the reason why we're able to work so perfectly is because I've had the privilege to see the transition, the change within the university from when the protests had not started to a fees must fall, to protest actions of workers in sourcing, and to a degree where now you see me coming in and you don't have any form of protest, but you are seeing more projects, you are seeing more practicality in terms of work, you are seeing more funds that are being raised, you are seeing more buildings that are opened for students, you are seeing all these projects. I think it's because being in the space long enough allowed me to see the vision, allowed me to understand the system. And then now having the younger generation that also has its own vision, then allowed the infusion of the two to create a perfect system that is worked at VETS. I think it was a shock when we first came into office and we said we are not going to be embarking into a protest action. And people were shocked as to VETS University. Why would someone who has experienced all these sort of protest action, the first time they enter office, they say they are not protesting? It's because of the mix of generation. After I'd consulted with my members, they expressed to say, look, they would want to first try alternative means before they can go into a protest. And I was able to listen. And that's what we tried, and fortunately it worked for us. So I think so far it's been working very well, and if it's implemented at a national level, we would see our country striving very high.
I'm very glad you touched on that, because also accompanying the shock is the doubt in your leadership, because now you bring in a very different dynamic that every other person before you hasn't had. And now it begs the question from, let's say I'm a first year, I know Wits University to be protesting every year. I come into Wits 2022, there's no protest. And having to see the results of that, having had the money that was raised and the millions that were raised, it begs the question to say, does it mean every other leader before you could not think of doing the same thing that you did? So it's as basic as walking, but I'm sure there's so many things that are attached to that that are behind the scenes that we do not know of. But how do you then break it down to a first year, the walking part of it and raising funds, and what is it that made predecessors not be able to look at that as a possible solution?
I think history tells us that we must read the material conditions. I can tell you that in 2015, when the protest action started, even if I was the president, I would have protested at the time. And it is because of the looming action and the type of violence that was being dished out to students. We had policies that were being passed in the institution whereby they were saying 50% of residencies must be occupied by white students. And at the time, they would raise fees. You see, when it's towards your exams, but not really your exams, they would raise your fees around September. They will raise fees, and there had been attempts to engage and to try and resolve these things in a dialogue sort of sense, but the management at the time didn't want to hear anything, and we went and mobilized students, and SRC came through, political parties came through, and we protested. And for so long, because the system wants to see if you are resistant enough. And from 2015 until 2021, we've been on a protest. Each and every year, we foster the system to take in students. Then when we came in, particularly after what happened to Ndumba, when one master's student, I think he was at UNISA, died when he was killed, brutally killed by police in Braamfontein. We sat down with so many people that I happened to run with in the SRC, and also with a lot of friends, and we expressed to say, let's approach this thing in a different way. We now had a new management within the institution. Zeblon Vilakazi had just taken office. And then we also had a new management within Rest Life. Then after discussing with them, and then I think the most important thing as a leader, it's knowing timing. Where you are able to speak and negotiate, you must do so. And where it's necessary for you to fight, you fight. Then after we engaged with management and I engaged with my team, and they had shared the fact that before they can go into the streets, they would want to exhaust themselves. They would want to exhaust the channels that have been opened, amongst them with the university, South African Business Forum, Black Business Forum, and other institutions. And we exhausted those channels. And unfortunately, with South African social media, even media houses, the moment you go into an institution of higher learning and you achieve a lot without having some sort of violence or insulting, they don't see that as news that is worthy to be put
To report.
to people there, or to be reported to South African society, because when so it was around the 2nd of Feb, and I was thinking to say, as a Wits SRC president, should I just go and celebrate my birthday with maybe drinking a few beers somewhere? But when I was sleeping, my consciousness sort of resisted, and I said, look, let me attempt this walk. And when I attempted, I received a lot of support. People I had never met, people I didn't even know that exist. And that's what changing the discourse is. And if it's possible for you as one person to avoid the killing of students, the brutality that is portrayed to students, if you can avoid that as one person, so why not then exercise that sort of a leeway you have? And I think after students had seen the commitment that we had in our SRC, had we sort of failed to raise funds and then we had called them into the streets, students were going to understand, to say, look, we did see the SRC actually trying to raise funds. We did see the SRC walking into union buildings. We did see SRC calling NSFAS. We did see SRC together with Wits students challenging NSFAS in court. And the leadership failed. Now they are calling us. Then you become justified. And these are the same stands that were taken before your 2015, 2016 fees must fall. When the likes of Yom Cebo were in office, they raised funds. They did raise funds. But when it came to a point where raising funds was not enough, when it came to a point having engagements was not enough, they then put a call to students, because the students had witnessed everything that the SRC of that time had tried to do. They came in numbers. Parents supported, society supported, businesses supported. And this is the similar stance that we've sort of taken in our SRC, to say, if there is a way for a Wits SRC president to avoid a first-year student getting into university their first day, they're involved in a protest, exhaust that channel. If there is a way for the Wits SRC to avoid another killing, brutal killing of university students, we exhaust those channels before we enter into violence. You see where you are going to see us in the streets. It's in regards to what is happening in our country. Their society, students, and everyone are experiencing hardships, be it in terms of electricity, be it in terms of buying food. Food prices are very, very high. I almost said ridiculous, but you'll forgive my language, but they are very high. Petrol prices are very high. The standard of living has become so difficult. And the more the standard of living becomes very high, it becomes very difficult for those that were already exposed to poverty. Things are increasing, but salaries are not increasing. And this is a fight we are willing to fight.
Now, you are very intentional about getting your hands dirty. I mean, you mentioned the progression in the projects that have happened ever since you've assumed office. But more than anything, we see you on the ground having to run these projects. We've seen you walk. We've seen you avail yourself for different houses to lead different movements. We've seen you being in partnership with different houses to fight issues of leases and policies. And clearly you are doing something right in transferring your vision towards other people. And I want to understand, what is it that makes the successful transfer? Because you work with people who have leadership understanding at different levels. How do you then successfully meet everyone at their level and keep the mandate the same?
I think more than anything, you need to make your intentions known to people. And then you must be able to reach out because you won't be able to achieve anything working alone. I can tell you there's so many vet students who are doing amazing things. You yourself, you've achieved a lot. I've checked your bio, I've checked a lot of things you're doing. That's why we were able to work together. So this thing, you cannot work in isolation, and you must be able to swallow your pride to say, yes, you're a vet's president, but do reach out. I reached out to people. But more than anything, I think I have an incredible team. So I have an SRC presidential advisor team. And these are the people that are able to take my ideas and bring them into reality. And these are the people that are 24/7 sitting in front of my computers in the office, responding to students. Because some of the projects that we've implemented is actually projects that were proposed by students. If you remember, we once posted that students, so when we took office, we said students can propose ideas they would want to see existing within the institution, or sort of things they would want to see the SRC working on, or the SRC president working on. And then we got a lot of proposals from students, and then through my office, my subcom, then we're able to read majority of them, and I went through a lot of them, and I can tell you that some of the ideas that I've implemented, they come directly from literally vet students. And it's amazing because some of them were literally going into their second year, and to come up with such bold ideas, it was a game changing. So one, you need to swallow your pride. You must be able to reach people. The very same people that voted for you, go and consult them. I can tell you, you'll get great ideas from students. There's projects that are happening outside of vets. You need to expose yourself into those. But there's also systems that have been put in place within the university. As much as we do fight against the university, there are, I think, infrastructure and systems we can use at our advantage to sort of assist students. And this is what we have done as the SRC. One, reaching out to people like you for advice. I remember calling you to say I'm stressed about the registrations and everything, and are you giving me a few advices? So I did not only call you. There's so many people I called, from old people to young people to people that are not even at vets, because sometimes you need a different perspective. You need to speak with someone who's outside, to speaking with my close friends, because those are the ones that sort of maybe even understand some of my motives, and they give you that honest opinion. And even calling the people that people would regard them as your enemies, but us, we do not have enemies. We just have people who have differences. And just because of differences, it doesn't mean that you guys cannot have a conversation. Actually, it's in those differences where you find out that no, actually you share a common goal. It's just that on execution, there might be differences that you can reconcile. And I think that has been at the center of the projects that we've done. That has been at the center of the money that we raised, engaging different communities. For majority of the years, when people are raising funds, people have never really tapped into religious communities. People would just approach businesses. But us, when we came into place, we approached businesses, we approached companies that people thought are not approachable. We approached companies that had never even stepped foot at Wits University. We approached embassies that people thought don't even care about Black people, whereas it was only a matter of sitting down and explaining these differences that exist. And actually, we find that no, we share a common goal. It was the ability to then approach religious leaders. We received so much support from different churches at within university and outside, from the likes of your CAF, coming out in numbers and praying for us. And people will undermine such things as prayer, but it has done incredible things for me, because there was a day I was very exhausted. Like I was exhausted, not physically, but I think in spirit and mind. And I was literally just walking on campus, and I see these CAF members. I think they could just see that, Norman, president is not fine. And they called me, they prayed for me. And after that prayer, the energy I got, it was just amazing. The support we got from Muslim Student Association, with the support we got from Jewish Student Association, the support we got from Jewish communities, the support we got from Black middle class, the support we got from Wits alumni, those that were students at Wits. Everything was amazing, and I think it's because we were able to say, look, you must humble yourself and ask for assistance, and people are going to come through and assist. And if they had failed to assist, and I think if we then went into the streets, everyone was going to understand. Everyone was going to say, look, they did come to my office. I couldn't assist them. Yes, they did call me. They did do this. But you must be humble, reach out to people. Having a high position doesn't mean that you're going to be able to achieve everything on your own. If the current president had reached out to many institutions, or even to some of us, perhaps things could be turning out well currently in the country.
You speak greatly about pushing boundaries, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Pushing boundaries does come with resistance from certain parties that are supposed to be on the same side as you. It comes with stepping on other people's toes by means of principle, clashing principles. So the activeness that comes from your office, I'm very interested to know what fuels it. Because in as much as, yes, you may reach out to people and also and do all that, you could also delegate. What is it about you that makes your in-person presence a pressing need for you while you execute all these activities?
Look, I think it's my experience. So I want to take you through something. So when I came to Wits, so I had applied into many other institutions like everyone else. And then even when I got accepted into so many institutions, but I was waiting for Wits, because my sister had told me that Wits is great, and that's where I literally wanted to go. Then when I was accepted, when I get to Wits, okay, results are great. And then they say, I did not apply for NSFAS, but I had proof that I had applied for it. They say the application is there, they don't see it. And I sat there the whole day, and I think it was around 4. I had given up. I was about to leave. Literally, I was about to go to Park Stage and take a bus and go back home. When I was about to leave the gate, I see students wearing yellow t-shirts. They're written SASCO. At the time, I didn't know anything about it. And at the time, the likes of your EFF and all of them didn't exist. It was only SASCO, ANC, YCL, and TA at the time. And I think that's when I met Cebolekosi. I mean, I think he could see that, no, man, this young man is devastated. And they ask, what are the problems? I tell them, no. They are saying, I did not apply for NSFAS, so I cannot register. Obviously, I didn't know majority of the systems you can use to register. And then quickly he says, no, let's go back to the office. They took me. When we entered there, he went for 5 minutes speaking with people there. All of a sudden, because it was many of us, our names were appearing on the list and everything, and we had applied. And I think it's that thing, giving back. And over the years, I've been trying to give back that sort of assistance I got, but it was only at this level now that I'm a SRC president, I'm able to assist a lot of students. And this one thing has kept me has been driving me for so many years. And I think outside of the fact that I think my subcom is very diverse, and like they motivate me so much. Like sometimes even when I'm down, and these are the people that come into the office and they bring the spirit. And you walk into the offices and you see the work that is being done by other SRC members. Everything just says to you, do something. Everything says, come back. Everything says it's possible. So it's my own experiences I had in my first year, and the work that is being done by other SRCs in office. And truly speaking, it is my subcom. My subcom is amazing. They share the same vision that I have. When we see an issue, we are able to come up with solutions. And when you have such a great team, it seems like everything is possible. And of course, it's true when you say that it's not easy to create relations because there are resistance. But to tell you the truth, the people that have come out to support us very, very big, it's those that seemed resistant at first.
So you mentioned how the change in leadership at Rest Life level and at university level has sort of brought some ease in how you were able to lead and take up office this term. You did mention a few months ago that management is not your friend. I'm very interested to know whether that sentiment has changed, if it has changed, and if not, what are some of the experiences currently that amplify it?
Thank you. Look, I can tell you that I'm not happy with some resolutions that are still continuing within the institution. For example, the policy of moving all senior students outside of Wits residencies. These are some of the policies that we are not supporting at all, and they are being pushed by Wits Rest Life and Wits management. And we believe that students must be able to mobilize. We have very strong house comms throughout Wits residencies, and we're engaging with them on Thursday and Friday. And these are some of the issues that actually came up. Even on Saturday, we met with them in the evening, some residencies, your men's rest, and some comrades are from Sunnyside and Reef, and some from Junction. We were engaging about these things to say we need to do something. And now you are aware that online classes are being reduced. We're going back into physical. As much as it's great that campus is opened, many students do not have funding. They were already staying at home. They had not made means of moving into Johannesburg. And now bursaries, your NASFAS, and all these things have closed. So there's no means for them to move into Johannesburg again and attend physical classes. So that means you are saying students must sleep at the libraries. These are the very same students that we raised money. We took them out of the libraries and we made them have beds. We made sure that they have a bed at South Point, they have a bed at Dunwell, they have a bed within Wits residence. We made sure that we give up our own rooms. They are able to sleep there, and we occupy some other different buildings that we can occupy, because by the virtue of being in SRC, you do have access, and you do have access in terms of assisting yourself. So sometimes even if it means you need to sort of give up the spaces you're occupying for students, you do that, particularly in January and then after this situation has sort of calmed down, then you can move back into your own space. So I am not happy about a lot of things, but there are things that I'm happy about. So there's few things that we had raised with the VC. For example, the hiring of students, student employment within campus. You can see that the numbers of students that are working within Wits and their Wits students are very high, and others, they choose to be paid, or whatever that is supposed to be paid for you, they just clear your outstanding fees, and that's why so many students are graduating. And then we're seeing the student lecture program coming back, because it had been stopped. I don't know for what, but we are happy that now, because some of our students are very brilliant and they need to be taken into the system, they are now back. And then there is some lectures that had left Wits because of we are not sure in terms of the management at the time as to what had happened. We see now that Wits has sort of made means to bring, particularly the young ones that were existing in the system, they are bringing them back, which is good, particularly there in the law faculty and accounting school, because that had really sort of affected us a little bit, because majority of these lectures that we're leaving were black. It wasn't just a white lecture or an Indian lecture or a colored lecture. It was black lectures. So we're happy that they are being brought back into the system. Obvious, then going forward, there is an issue of students that are defunded. And the students that are defunded is not only LLB students. Yes, we have LLB students, and Wits, of course, has sort of come in and assisted us, because they are directly funding the students that were defunded while they were already studying specific programs. And then those that were aware that NSFAS had already defunded specific programs and still studied them, Wits obviously refused to fund those, and which is why now I think our fight is going to be directed into the government to say the SRC has come into place, because also our fundraising officer and our TG, they've sort of secured a lot of funds. They've come in, they've assisted students to this extent. The university has come and swallowed 65% of these students that we've defunded. We still have a specific percentage that is left out, and that percentage must be covered by government. So our next big fight that you are going to see is the one that is directed to government, and it's not only towards the Department of Higher Education, but there are many issues that are happening in the country, and we need reforms. We need reforms now. I can tell you that majority of young people, including yourself, we are all worried about the direction that our country is taking. So this is the one fight that I think we are all willing to sort of join, and we're all willing to fight for. Not that there aren't issues within campus, but we believe that as young people, our leadership expands beyond campuses, expand beyond residencies. Our leadership is meant for the entire country. We have demonstrated that we are capable. We've demonstrated that we can work together. We've demonstrated that we can work with different organizations. We've demonstrated that we can work beyond the color of the skin color of someone. We've demonstrated that we can work beyond the gender barriers that are put on individuals. Thank you.
Yeah, that you said a mouthful there. You were invited recently at a residence to have a men's conference, and for those that have known you for a while, they know that it's not something new when it comes to you. It's something you've heard with your friends. Yes, it was not formal then, but in answering a call of the residents this time, what have you seen to be the differences in some of the challenges that young men are faced with? So from then, when you had them just as friends and in friendship circles,
Yeah.
to now when it's formal and they say, President, come, let's talk about masculinity. What difference there is in terms of some of the issues that young men face?
Look, I think to be honest, there's a lot of pressure on young men, either be it from homes or primary school, high school, and at varsity. There's a lot of pressure for them to sort of have everything together. And I think what is sort of different, um, I'm not sure whether is it a generational thing, or is it something that is in the air, or is it the spirit, or what? But majority of young men are struggling with mental health issues. That's one thing I've seen. And this is something that my generation and those that are sort of older than us, they had that struggle, but it wasn't as intense or as it was, or maybe we were not vocal about it. But majority of young men are struggling with mental health issues. That's why when you are looking at states, majority of people that commit suicide, that are in prison, people that are generally facing poverty, it is men. It's just that there is that a small fraction of men that are doing absolutely well, and then people will think that all men are doing well. And then coming into university, the fact that you have to fit in, and I know that affects even all the other genders, but the fact that you have to fit in, you have to have proper clothes as a guy in order to either fit in with women or in order to seem attractive. And I know that this bothers a lot of young men when they are literally first year into the space, and these are some of the conversations that they have raised either with me when they see me at bus stop, or when we're in these formal talks. And people will take it slightly because they'll say, but it's only dating. No, but it's stressing someone to a point that they commit suicide. That means there's a problem with that. And also the fact that the burden of improving back at home, is put on a majority of young men. So now when they are here at Wits or whatever institution they are in, and you are in third year, you are doing your second degree, you're not getting any form of job. There is nothing promising in terms of permanent employment. You can see that they are frustrated. You can see that they lose hope. But more than anything, I think currently majority of young people, and I don't want to say that we sort of overdosing the alcohol and everything, but I would like to think at some point I did abuse alcohol, when I was young, and I think that is the danger with a majority of young people, to say we drink like there is no tomorrow. And if we're not studying, we're drinking. If we are not back at home, we're drinking. If you are not doing something serious, you're drinking. And this culture of just drinking so much from Sunday to Sunday, it's really killing majority of young men. And generally the issue of drugs. And because when you speak about drugs, people think about drugs in emalokishini, but it's not only there. Within university, if you go to AKESO, majority there is students that are mentally disturbed because of smoking weed and all these things. So trying to have a good life is sort of affecting majority of our young men, because you're trying to have fun, but in the long run is sort of affecting you. And then also the pressure that comes from home, and also just wanting to fit in. And people might think it's an easy thing, wanting to fit in is so difficult because you find yourself doing things that you never even imagined that you were going to do. But I think then some of the sort of solutions that these young men have sort of come up with, and I've literally seen this group. So they've what you call pressure groups, I don't know what young people call them now, but literally I saw it at Yale Village. They play pool together, they watch soccer together. It becomes some sort of a big event, and there's conversations there. They are speaking about issues that are affecting the university, issues that are affecting our parents, issues that are affecting them. And they're speaking about how to improve their situation in the country. There's many clubs that have been started, particularly aimed at empowering young men. And these clubs are started by people that are within Wits. So I think there's been some sort of improvement from these struggles. And I think another thing that really is affecting young people, particularly men, when you speak about gender-based violence, you would only think that it affects women, children, and other marginalized communities. But so many young men are living with traumas they saw at home, traumas they saw in the streets, where their sisters, where their mothers were harassed, where their mothers were treated badly, and they're coming into university, and you are thinking they have it together, but they are sitting there quietly, and you have no idea that they've been through this journey that has sort of changed almost everything, and they even hate the idea, of even wanting to date or wanting to exist because of what has happened to those that they love. So these are things that I think are not really addressed because there is a lot of generational traumas within young people. And the moment that we have programs that are aimed at addressing them, I think we're going to see a more improved version of young men within our university and throughout the country.
I want to bring in a comment from Lord Tema, who says, but President, the substance abuse is rife now and born out of frustration. There's no opportunity, there's no alternative. And in engaging with that, I want you to go back to your personal self. How do you keep a healthy mental state? Because in as much as you've mentioned all these problems, you're also a man yourself. More than anything, you are the president of a university with over 30,000 students. Your friend, who was your predecessor, also like saying that we don't just know the student numbers and the names, we know the faces. That is alluding to the many students that come to you in seeking help. So you also have the burden of carrying other people's burdens. How do you, as a man, as a president, as a leader, as a human being, keep a good mental health?
I believe that some things align with the stars. My name is Cebolenkosi Khumalo. And part of my clan names is Umzilikazi, Kamashoban. And if you were to track the history of Umzilikazi, he was a king and he was meant to lead people. And I believe I have a big heart because these are the things that maybe some people, if you were to be exposed into a situation where you are taking up so much problems, and having to give solutions and all that, generally they get to you, they affect you. And I don't want to say maybe they get to me, they do get to me, but I believe that a part of me in my bloodline, a part of me in my veins was born for this. I'm meant to give energy to people. I'm meant to take up these problems and turn them to a light. And I believe that leaders are born and shaped by the conditions that exist on the ground. I'm from a lineage of leadership. I'm from a lineage of kings. And I'm here now as a president, exposed to a lot of people, receiving a lot of different energies. And I believe that these are energies that I was meant to take up and turn them into a positive. But more than anything, I think the messages I get from students, your random emails, when they are saying, a friend of mine got assisted, thank you, keep going, random prayers you get at matrix. And I told you about Kev praying for me. These are the things that I think it's different spirits in the air, making sure that something keeps going, spirits align with each other. They are able to recognize each other. And I believe that when my spirit is a little bit down, the other people that are gifted within campus, because it doesn't make sense that a random student would just come to you when you're sitting and say, hi, how are you? Can I please pray for you? I know that you are dealing with a lot. You're dealing with a lot of students, but I wanted to pray for you so that you have the energy to keep going. How do you explain that? So there are energies that are aligning, and there's support. I think there's a lot of support from my friends. There's a lot of support back at home. And then with people that I'm working with in terms of different projects, there's a lot of support, and they keep on checking, to say, are you fine? Are you hanging in there? How is it going? Don't worry, it's gonna be fixed, So it's a lot of things that keep us going. But most people would know that I do run. I think sometimes when I'm sort of stressed, when I enter the road, and then when I'm jogging, literally running, that's when majority of my crazy ideas actually come, when I'm running. And when I'm running, part of me, even if I feel a bit stressed, is sort of released. And different things work for people. Others, they might need to maybe go for a drive. Others maybe need to speak to a friend, and maybe others need to go home. And if you're in leadership, there's a need to go home. You must go home. If you don't go home, you're going to collapse. When you go home, you're going to a place where you're able to recharge yourself, to recharge your energy, to recharge everything around you. Of course, I understand for those that are coming from toxic environments, homes that are not really regarded as homes. Obvious, you're going to be forced to stay here. But I believe that we have churches at Wits that are really big on supporting. For example, outside of Kef, there's also Ushembe, and there's a lot of young women and young men that would come on a daily basis, from Zulu society, just to check, random calls to say, President, we saw that there's this thing that is happening at Wits. Do you need any assistance? They come through and assist. I'm going into programs at UK. I'm going into programs in other provinces. A student comes and says, no, President, I saw that you posted you were going into this program. Can I drive you there and just be there the whole day? So I think that's one thing that I've had lucky with, to say I've been able to communicate with people. I've been able to get support from them. And outside of that, I do run. But sleeping is important. Just 6 hours of sleep. Make sure you try to sleep. And I do go out from now and then, when I'm free. Like, I do go out, have a few drinks with my friends. But I always try to regulate it so that you don't find yourself drinking to a point that you don't know tomorrow, or maybe you find yourself drinking because you have problems. That's one thing I've always tried to avoid. I've been a victim of that. Back in 20, I think it was in 20, after fees must fall. After fees must fall, I failed my academics, and I found myself sort of drinking a lot, and it took a lot for me to come out of that. So I'm speaking from what you can call experience.
Now, going back to the average student on campus who's not a Khumalo, who does not have royalty lineage. Now, we do know that there are existing institutions on campus that are mainly designated to deal with the mental health of students, but we cannot ignore the stigma attached to them. So what responsibility do you think leaders have in destigmatizing an institution like CCDU?
You know, when you're speaking of CCTU, I think it's an institution that was built, I think, with sort of great intentions. But I can tell you that within the past week, I've had a few students coming saying, look, I was at CCTU. They've chased me back for more than 3 times. So then it becomes quite difficult for me to stand here and really advocate for them. But yet I know students that have said, I was at CCTU, I spoke with this lady, I spoke with this young man, look, they assisted me. I think now things are better. So what I would say to a young person at this point is that everyone is struggling. That's one thing I can tell you. Everyone is struggling, and you know your struggles, and you know what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with speaking with people you know, do so. They don't have to be your friends. It can be just a random person like me. But also, if you want some sort of privacy in terms of advice and everything, do approach CCTU. I can tell you there is integrity. There is professionals that are there in that space. They are able to speak to you and they advise you. And no one is going to know about any of the things that they would have advised you on. And if there is a need, because most people would want to go into hospitals, go into AKESO without going into CCTU. Going into CCTU is a first step of just checking. You know, sometimes things happen in life and you become so unsure as to whether do I have this problem? Do you have this problem? So take CCTU as a first step of just checking if maybe you have a problem. And for those that maybe are aware that they do have a problem, CCTU is a stepping stone into accessing the sort of need you want. I've never been in therapy. Perhaps maybe my form of therapy is engaging with strangers I meet when I'm out, or those that I meet when I'm literally chilling on campus. Maybe that's my form of therapy. But I can tell you that from my friends that have been at CCTU, from students that have been there, those that have gotten assistance, I'm confident that it's a space, it's a safe space to go to. It's a space that is able to treat your issues with integrity. And for those that have been turned back by CCTU, do approach us. We have a healthy officer in the SRC. If you can't reach her, you can approach me directly. I'll channel you into the right people or to the right offices. We care about vet students. That's one thing. You know, when you hear that a vet student has passed away, has committed suicide, that thing kills me slowly. It kills me inside because I know a few that have reached to me, and I've been able to speak to them. I've been able to take them into right places, into right people. And when they come back and they say, President, look, I'm not yet fine, but I'm doing better. I'm going to continue with the counseling. It makes me feel better. It changes everything. It lights up my mood. Thank you.
Now, before you were president, you've seen people become presidents. In fact, one of your close friends was a president. And when we talk about leadership, we often talk about the passion attached to it. And sometimes the passion is irritation, having to see leaders come in and out and not addressing a particular issue. I'm very interested to know that before your term started, when you availed yourself to say, I'm available to run for president, what was that for you? What was the one thing that irritated you so much, or you were passionate about it so much so that when you assumed the role of presidency, it was your target?
So the one thing I think during Fees Must Fall, I was put under to be the head of the legal team, but also I was part of the Stone Brigade that was just there to ensure that police either don't attack students and everything. So with having ideas and staying at Wits for a long time, and then when we tried, I think under the leadership of Mpendulo, when we tried to sort of go for raising funds, and it was sort of rejected, and seeing the ability Mpendulo had to sort of raise funds, because I think he did manage to raise like 9 million. I then told myself that, look, there's a alternative way that is not being explored by the political space. And because majority of the protests had been used for just political interest, wanting to seem relevant, if you are seen just marching there, you are seen as doing more work, whereas you're not even doing anything at all. And then to tell you the truth, there's these random people you meet and they say, Ntunga, we think you're gonna do well if you go into governance. Your ability to deal with issues is very intense. And being in the organization, like I had been in SASCO for the longest, and having been the longest serving chair, and having to play that role of a big brand organization into the SRC, into house call. And when students came to me to say, we think you should contest for SRC president, I saw it fit that, look, I'll be bringing sort of a new idea, because I know people that have tried to raise funds, just that maybe they were not able to raise what we've raised currently. Because currently, on top of the 12 million that we raised, there's other SRC members that have been able to bring more funds. And then last week, I secured 1.5 million from United Arab Emirates, which we're going to announce it later on once the university has matched us, meaning that we're going to have a 3 million. So it's that sort of support base from students that really made me push towards leadership. And I think I really love working with people. I work well with people. One thing that we fail to do as the country is, those that want to go into business, they must go into business. And those that want to be in the business of managing people, you are a servant, you are sent by people. They must be there. And that's one thing that I've appreciated to say. My great-great-grandfather, those that I don't know, along the lineage of Khumalo, were kings. And I felt the responsibility to go and share this passion I have about serving people. And so far, I think we've been doing well. We've been putting a lot of energy towards ensuring that students are assisted, even if it's the smallest issues that people think, how is that a person doesn't know that they're supposed to call NSFAS, simple things as such. And the gap that we see in the country has also pushed me to say, let me avail myself to test my abilities and to see that the same support I had when I was a chair is the same support that I'm going to receive when I'm a president. And the same connection, influence that we've built over the years, we can use it to change student lives. These are the things that really moved me towards running to be the president. And, knowing that you can change a situation. There are those things, that if someone was to come to Karabo and say, Karabo, I'm doing grade 1. I wanted to know what is 1 + 1. You know that you have the ability to explain to them how you arrive to that situation and even get them the answers. So I found myself in that situation. That's why I stepped in.
You did mention that you have a few belts to your name. Congratulations on your recent graduation as well. Just recently on Friday, you were a keynote speaker, I think, at an academic dinner, men's race and Jubilee Halls of Residence. So you are familiar with conversations of academic excellence. And I really want to do justice and bring you back to the opposite end. It's now the second semester. We've had the first week going on. We've had our marks from first semester. It hasn't been easy for everyone. So now what do you have to say to people who did not make it? There are people who are currently in final year who had semester modules and they didn't pass. There's panic around that. There are people who are being funded by NSFAS for the last time this year and they did not pass. And there's uncertainty with now where to from here. There are people who are in first year who are encountering failure for the very first time and they feel like they're here by mistake. So what do you have to say now to people who did not make it, people who self-service did not leave a smile after they've seen their transcript from the June exams?
Look, perhaps before I can say anything to them, I was supposed to graduate with my first degree in 2017, but I had failed that year. I couldn't graduate. I had to come back and repeat. I passed, then went for my LLB. Sorry, my LLB was supposed to be for 2 years. The first year, 2019, because also people fail for different reasons. 2019, I buried a lot of my family members, but at the time I thought I was fine. But to my surprise, I almost got excluded. I almost failed everything. Like when I mean everything, out of 9 courses, I think I only passed like 5. So I almost failed everything in that situation. And then having to now come back and I think going home also assisted me a lot because I went home and I was reminded, because sometimes you stay so much within the system and you forget about what is at home. Then when I went home, I was sort of reminded about what I left at home, about the people that are waiting for me. The fact that that then reminded me to say, hey, wake up, Ndota, wake up. But I think first we have to start here. People fail for different reasons. There's an issue of mental health. Majority of people are failing because they're struggling mentally. You don't have to only go to CCTU. There are programs that are ran by different schools. You just have to approach your lecturers or approach your faculty. They can assist you in that. And I can tell you, the moment you reach out, you get a lot of support from lecturers, from tutors, and from the school. And it could be able to take you out from the struggles you are facing, particularly if it's mental health. And there's the fact that someone doesn't have accommodation. Just that this year, we've been able to sort of get accommodation for majority of students. Just that now it's coming back again because students have been forced to come and attend physically. We know that if you don't have food, you're not eating, you're gonna fail. But at Wits, we have the WCCO. SRC raises a lot of funds towards WCCO, and WCCO, which is the Wits Food Bank, they also have their own programs. Each and every day they dish out food, they give food to people, they give food parcels, toiletries, and all these things. So I think it's important for us to utilize these systems, because sometimes you find out you're only you're sleeping hungry because you didn't explore the fact that you can go and eat at Wits Food Bank. And then there's those that are failing because of struggles that they have at home. The fact that your parents are seen as too rich to be on NSFAS, but they are very poor to afford Wits fees. As a result, you find yourself self-funding. You don't have a bursary because you are seen as an average student since you got 60s. Try to reach out. Particularly, we have what you call emergency accommodation in the beginning of the year, if the environment is not conducive for you to stay at home. If you reach out early, there's a lot of people that have been placed on emergency accommodation, and you can get assistance. But for those that have already failed now, I think those that are doing full year courses, look, it's the first term. There was a time when I was doing a contract, and my first test, and I was studying as a group, I was very confident, and I was the only one who failed in that group. I think it was out of, I'm not sure whether it was out of 30 or 20, but I think I got like something around 5 there, and I just couldn't believe how I got to that level. And after that, I went back. Sometimes before you can study with a group, it means you must study alone. Just because a specific method worked for Cebolenkosi Khumalo, it doesn't mean it's going to work for Karabo. Just because someone cross nights the whole night doesn't mean that Sbusiso must cross night also. Maybe Sbusiso needs to sleep at 10 and wake up in the morning, attend class, listen, write notes, whereas Cebolenkosi Khumalo needs to study before then attend class. There are different ways of studying, and there are tutors that are willing to assist you. Approach them. And then to final years, that thing is very painful. That thing is very painful, I can tell you, because now you are thinking you're going to work, everything is done. But look, I think everything happens for a reason. It's only a semester course. You can still come back. It's only 6 months more. But just because there's difficulties in terms of funding, make sure that you approach the SRC, you speak with the university, so that you don't find yourself struggling with a place to stay, or even with having the basic needs, because you are regarded as a part-time student in the system, since your program is going to be ending next year in June. So you have to plan ahead for these things. And those that have already failed now, I can tell you, if you know that you're going to be excluded by the end of the year, consult now, because the first question they're going to do is to say, when you realize that you are failing, what measures did you take? That is going to be the question. And that is the question that is the ability to bring you back and ability to ensure that you don't come back into the institution. So if you know that you are failing right now, if you have not bothered that lecture there, your course coordinator, make sure that you approach them tomorrow morning, book a meeting, consult them, make sure they know your face, so that even if at the end of the year you fail, but they know that you did put an effort. And if maybe you are not comfortable with approaching your lecturers, do approach us. Do approach the Office of Dean of Student, Jerome September. I think he's been really open to students. He's willing to really assist a lot of students. That's what I really have to say. If obviously there are other personal things that people would want us to touch on, come to our offices and then we can properly advise.
I also wanted to ask, what do you think of the future of leadership, student leadership at Wits University? And I'm saying this because currently there's clashes, again, generational differences, again, having our leadership being influenced by different environments and therefore affecting how we lead. There's the generation that thinks this generation has lost its roots, but there's this generation that thinks we need to do away with certain things because now we are leading in a different environment. We are leading in a different season, So what do you think about the future of leadership, student leadership in Wits University in particular? And I ask this because you've got comrades like yourself who belong to political parties, and they tend to undermine people who have not read a Frantz Fanon, people who have not been acquainted with Marxism theory and all of that. So the absence of that seems to them as the absence of leadership. What do you have to say about that?
Thank you. Look, if there's one thing that I'm confident on is the leadership of Wits students. People are always going to have different feelings, right? But year in and year out, we've had, we can take it back into the leadership of your Maurice Masuta. They came in and went out. We can even take it back into the year of your Floyd. They came in and went out. We can take it to the year of Aboyulo, Nompendulo Mkhacho. They came in and went out, and they did great things. We can take it back into the year of your Mcebo Dlamini. They came in and came out. We can take it back into the year of Sisanda Aluta. She came in, did great things, and went out. We can take it back to the year of Otuto. He came in, did great things, and went out. Came in, Umpendulo Mfeka, did a lot of things, and went out, and we came in. And if there is one thing that they must be confident in, is that whether is it in political spaces or outside of politics, Wits students, if leadership is failing them, they're going to lead themselves, and they're going to make sure that they find a proper leader to occupy a position in the SRC. That's one thing that I'm very confident about Wits students, particularly when it comes to leadership. The leadership that has been demonstrated in residencies, in terms of bringing the race culture, in terms of creating brotherhood, sisterhood, educating first years about rights of others, about awareness, about gender-based violence, about what it means to say no or when someone says yes, consent. I think there's an abundance of leadership at Wits. I mean, if I were to bring a practical example, with the recent trends that have been happening, you look at Prof. Zeblon Vilakazi, you look at the VC of UJ, you look at the VC of UCT. They are all from Wits. That's one common thing they have. It's not only them. You look at the vice chancellor of UNISA. She's from Wits. You look at the vice chancellor of CPUT. He was at Wits at some point. You look at the leadership at Sol Black. Is from Wits. I can count so many institutions that are doing well because of people that were at Wits. And as much as these people have left, Wits is still doing great. And this shows that leadership cultivation is not only at SRC level, it starts in school councils, it starts in clubs and societies, goes to house coms, it goes into your ARSC, it goes into your all faculty councils, it goes into churches, it goes into religious organizations. So there's so much capacity that I've seen. There's so many young people personally that I've groomed, and I know that my friends that were presidents are grooming many, and I know that there's organizations that are currently registered and they are grooming leadership. And if you can look, majority of the people in the country that are in leadership positions that are from Wits have been doing great. So if there's one thing that I'm very confident in is the leadership of Wits. We're always going to have someone correct, someone right to take up the Wits SRC seat. In terms of generational mix, debates are natural. Conflicts are always there. Just because there are disagreements amongst generation, it doesn't mean that they are fights. They are debates so that people can find a common denominator and work towards one resolution.
It's funny how you mentioned the VC of UCT, you mentioned the VC of Wits, and I'd like to call in a name, Khumalo. The common thread is not just Wits, but also having those people to have their leadership doubted at some point. You go back to the VC where people were questioning what kind of VC rather has a tattoo, for instance. Someone in academia space, what kind of a VC has a tattoo? You go to Zeblon, there was a point where people didn't give a Zeblon. You go to a table, there were people who have said things and written things about. So at some point, all three of you, the common thread again is having your leadership to be doubted. Now, as a point of pivot, because you've clearly shaken the ground, you've pivoted this leadership thing, you've brought a new dynamic to it, it exerts pressure on now the next SRC president. They may have the pressure to be like you and continue, or the pressure to revolt because they think what was done before is much more progressive than what you were doing. Words of advice to the next SRC president?
Be humble. That seat is temporal, and yet it is powerful and achieve so many things within a space of literally 12 months. Work with those that have walked the road. Be willing to work with different organizations on campus. Believe me, they've existed longer than that seat. They know the route. Work with outside communities. They've been assisting vets for over 40 years, some of them. They will take you into the greater heights. Where there are failures, don't hesitate, come guns blazing. If you need to negotiate, go into the negotiating table. Don't compromise students. Where you fail, inform students. Try to be transparent about what you want. For example, when I came in, I said I only have 3 goals. One was to ensure that students register without having to protest and do everything. The second one was to provide accommodation to students. And the third one was to clear out the debt of student, which is 1 billion. And so far, I believe I've worked on the first 2, even though the other one is still coming up on a daily basis. And now we're working on the third one. So be clear on your goals so that people know what are your intentions and what you are working on. Do not fear management. You are voted by students. You represent thousands and thousands. You represent the future of this country. You represent families that were denied access. You represent families that didn't have something to eat because they had to send someone to Wits University. So do not be afraid to engage with management. But remember, you are not just an SRC. Wits SRC is the SRC of all SRCs in the country.
I want us to talk about networking skills. What do you think it is about your networking skills that gets people to listen? Because we've seen the emails of several universities overseas inviting you. We've seen you having to have people commit their money into funding some of the projects that you have proposed in assisting students. So what do you think there is to your networking skills that gets to make people make those decisions?
I think the willingness to learn, because just because you're a president, it doesn't mean you know everything. I think that's one thing people need to understand. As a president, it doesn't mean that you need to know everything. Where you don't know something, it means you must bring in your TG, bring in a friend of yours that has a father that is probably head of NASFAS. Bring in someone at a church who probably knows Cyril Ramaphosa somewhere, because some of these things you really have to ensure that the sons of these politicians, the sons of these rich people, the sons of the billionaires of South Africa are the ones that are actually pushing these debates when they go home, when they're having meals, when they go home into trips, when they go home into whatever that they do. You need to ensure that as a president, you speak with the sons and daughters of these influential people within the country. But you need to have a vision. You need to be doing something, because it's quite difficult to support someone who doesn't know what they are doing. You are called and they ask you, why did you contest for SRC president? You have no idea why you are contesting. They ask you, what is your vision? You don't even know what you want to achieve as an SRC. They ask you, ideologically, where do you stand? And perhaps maybe others might not understand ideologically, but there are specific principles and beliefs that you have as a person. And when you go into these networking spaces, and when you are given that 2 minutes opportunity to tell a Patrice Motsepe why you want to clear out student debt, and you fail to do so, it's going to be difficult for them to support you in your vision. So where you know that you lack in articulation, try to bring those that can articulate a specific position better. And there can be improvements that can be made. Make sure that you join a debate union. Make sure that you read a lot. Reading really does shape one's mind, because it not only brings confidence, it brings the ability to think on the spot and to be very concise and hit the spot in terms of what you want your message to be. That's what I would say.
Before I let you go, we are heading into Women's Month, and I'm very interested to know perhaps a few names of women that influence your leadership style, if there are any, and your special message to women of South Africa.
Look, I have many mentors for different things, One of the women that have supported me is Seme. She was my lecturer for property. I don't engage with her every day, but where I see her and engage her, I'm left a different person. I'm left with different ideas. She's now lecturing at UJ, but she's one of the greatest lecturers, and one of the women that have really influenced me. Outside of that, I have Leslie N. She is the president at Convocation. She's one person that has been able to advise me in terms of some of the strategic moves as to how do I pitch for people to give in funds, how do I even present some of the projects into your Oxford universities, into your London universities, you know. These are the two women that have been really strategic. But outside of that, I think I'm really inspired by my mother a lot in so many ways, and my sister, because my mother is coming from nothing, and yet she was able to provide for me until I finished my matric. And even when I was doing my first year, she really played a lot. She gave me everything that I needed, and I'm truly, truly inspired by her actions. And if I were to say the list of women that have inspired me, because each and every day I meet so many different women in the space, black women, colored women, white women, and they inspire me in so many ways, and they feed into the different characters that are needed to shape a leader. I wouldn't finish the list. Funny enough, you know, some were literally students at Wits, and I'm inspired by them, and it's going to be shocking because people will think, but that's a young woman. How can you be inspired by a young woman? So, yeah.
All right. I did ask for a short message to the women of South Africa, but I think you should do that at the end when we wrap up,
Yeah.
after your parting shots. Yes, you can go ahead.
Look, in closing, what I want to say is that the country is dying. Many people are wondering where the coal is going. Coal is going to Europe. You are aware about the wars of Russia and some countries in Europe, and the fact that Russia now has closed its gas. What is happening is that the president of the country is diverting coal from South Africans to go and make sure that Europe lights are on, which then you must ask yourself as to whether the lives of Europeans are they more important than South Africans. I believe we have specific reforms that must be changed. One being the fact that all young people after matric should go to the military for either 1 year or 2 years to develop patriotism and other skills that are necessary for leadership and to create a different citizen for this country. Another thing is we need a new system of education. The one we have is not enough to tackle the problems that are faced by our people. Other reforms obviously relate into making sure that this issue of private hospitals and private schools is limited, because now more attention is given to these private schools and private hospitals, leaving majority of South Africans languishing. I wish I had more time to articulate my positions on how do I view the next coming 10 years or the next coming 2 years of South Africa. But what I think is that I know it's going to be great. I know that one of these days, as young people, as SRC presidents from different universities, we're going to combine and march towards one resolution of asking for reforms and, if necessary, to bring a new leader, a type of leadership into South African political space or in government. But because it's Women Month, we're going to be going to Women Month. We have a program for you. We're not going to only limit it to vet students, but it is going to be at vets. You are aware that we've been hosting many programs, and we've been actually bringing key speakers that you've requested. Even for this coming program, you can still reach into the SRC page or directly to my page and announce some of the speakers or topics that you'd want for us to touch on. But there is a massive program that the SRC and the university is working on. We're going to announce it. So make sure that you check our social media pages and support us. Thank you.
All right, so and that's it from me. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for availing yourself to give us insightful, thoughts on whatever that we've asked you. Most importantly, thank you so much for availing yourself to be on the ground on many, many, many instances. We've seen you, we've seen your face, we've seen your presence, we've felt your contributions, and you've also had the same struggle that we had as students, and you've championed it, whether it was from a race you lived in or not, whether it was something you believed in personally or not, but you've always been there, and we truly, truly appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Karabo. Look, so I've had the privilege to read this book. I think it's very brilliant. I don't know whether it's me, but I think maybe there's another part, right, that I haven't read. So first, I would encourage for people to check out this book. Particularly, I'll suggest it to people within institutions of higher learning, and also even those that are doing your matric and grade 11. It's gonna give you a special insight about some of the things that you wish you would have known, particularly before entering into these spaces that some of us find in. Continue doing the amazing work you're doing, and giving us platforms where it seems that social media and the media houses are refusing to acknowledge the work that we've done, because it has been peaceful. You have continuously supported us, and continue being on the ground, and we hope to see you in the ballots of SRC. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Cebo. I think one thing that stands out again about you is how accessible you are, and not just accessible in person, but accessible in conversation. Language plays a very huge role. You having to have the belts that you have, you could have easily made conversations with you inaccessible by throwing in legal jargons there. But access to you is then so easy that it is in conversation, accessing to you in language, and again having to have access to you in physical presence as well. Thank you so much for changing the narrative of the SRC, for changing the narrative around student leaders, because there was a lot that we had misconceptions that we held before you came into office, and having seen you change the ground and become a decisive leader and take on the heat, and most importantly do the work and get your hands dirty, has been nothing short of inspiration. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, guys, for your interaction and for the views that we've heard. Thank you for your contributions. This was Cebolenkosi Khumalo. Please note that this was recorded and will be made available on YouTube. With your consent, Cebo, I know you're a law student. I don't have funds to be sued.
No, of course.
So yes, I'm going to make this available on YouTube, and I'll be sharing the link also. Thank you so much for your time once again. Have a good night.
Thank you. Sharp.